Hello there and welcome back to the channel. This is Nerd World, and in today's episode we are looking at the Dalek saucer from Invasion Earth 2155, a 1996 movie that is somewhat out of the main Doctor Who canon, as this film would feature Peter Cushing as the titular Doctor with his family, including his granddaughter Susan. Although certain elements of this story have found their way sneakily into mainline canon over the years through hints and nods, such as references to the fact that the Doctor may have had family, grandchildren, and other relatives who were probably wiped out during the Great War with the Daleks, the so-called Time War. It's also got elements of it that hint that, for example, someone tried to move the Earth before, and this was probably a reference to this movie, even though it's not overly stated. As I said, certain elements and story beats have made it into various episodes, both in classic Who from the 1970s and 80s, and in more modern movies and series. But that said, we are going to be looking at the main battle wagon of the Daleks of this movie, a ship that kind of is the hot rod of the Dalek Empire. A beautifully designed ship, actually, which is very unique and very elegant looking. I really love this ship, considering it's so simplistic yet functional and very interesting. Like I said, it kind of does look with its fins and those things, is kind of like it is like a 1950s hot rod, but I think that adds to its charm. I mean, who wouldn't want to fly a hot rod through space? You're a Dalek going on to conquer the galaxy, do it in some style. Anyway, with all that said, let's get into this story and history and what we know about this ship, its capabilities from the 1966 movie, Dalek Invasion Earth. Okay, so just a little bit of framing for those who aren't familiar. The Daleks are one of the main villains of the Doctor Who series. They were created by a geneticist by the name of Davros. Davros was a Khaled. The Khaleds were a humanoid bipedal species that lived on the planet of Skaro. They've been involved in a very long war that's another video in and of itself, and basically their species were beginning to mutate. Predicting the fate of their civilization, Davros began to tamper and accelerate this change by tampering with the gene pool, and he would go on to create a machine that would be a form of locomotion from the natural state that their race were going to evolve into anyway. But he decided, while helping this process along, he'd actually improve the species, as he called it. Now, bear in mind, a lot of people get confused. The Daleks are not robots. Daleks are nothing more than, they're similar to a knight in shining armor, for lack of a better term, although they're not as chivalrous. Basically, the Dalek is a living biological creature that lives inside of a set of armor, which it thrives around in practically all the time, very rarely if ever leaving the suit once it gets inside it. The species reproduce asexually and lay eggs, as far as we can tell. They are actually venomous and are in general appearance a bit like a sort of mutant squid with a single eye and a large sort of visible brain, as they don't seem to have any natural bones anymore, despite their Khaled ancestors looking basically human. Now that's who the Daleks were. Because of Davros' tampering, instead of having the full range of normal emotions and psychological states of other species, he removed what he perceived as weaknesses to make them the perfect killing machine. They would only feel rage and contempt for others that were not like themselves. Even amongst their own kind, if there was any deviation, they would simply exterminate it. Mutation and evolution was not necessary for a race that saw itself as racially perfect. Now, that brings us to the invasion of Earth. The Doctor, in this particular continuity, is a human, not a Gallifreyan Time Lord. He has a human family and a time machine, which is the TARDIS, the time and relative dimension in space. Basically a little blue police box which is bigger on the inside. Accidentally picking up a police officer played by Bernard Cribbins. For Doctor Who fans, we all know who he is. Amazing. Anyway, they end up going into the future, and they kind of get stuck there, and they find that the Daleks have invaded Earth. Now, they only seem to have one ship, but it's all they really need, because this motherfucker is amazing. This ship absolutely levels everything in front of it. It is a large, as I said, basically space hot rod with 2 rotating sections on it. It is armed with particle weapons that are capable, even at a low setting, of easily destroying any Earth vehicle. It seems to be immune to pretty much all weapons and technology, so despite the fact that the Daleks seemingly were able to hold Earth with just a single one of these vessels, despite Earth's technical capabilities, we were no match for the Daleks, and this ship was easily able to overwhelm Earth's defences. The Daleks themselves, in this iteration, do not have energy weapons, but actually utilise some kind of gaseous spray that's just as effective at killing people as pretty much everything the Daleks create is designed to kill Daleks. Anyway, the ship itself is obviously capable of interplanetary travel and FTL capable. It has shields and is capable of atmospheric entry and landing, and utilises booster rockets to get it off the ground. At this point in their technical development, these Daleks had not developed any kind of transmat or teleportation capabilities, so getting on and off the ship was done fairly conventionally, using a ramp, as we all know Daleks struggle with stairs. In order to facilitate a more efficient conquest of the human race, they created a sort of slave race of humans known as the Robomen. Obviously a similar idea to the Cybermen. These were humans that had been converted into biological slaves to control the other humans. They were seemingly relatively mindless and relatively simplistic, but they were good enough to control the other humans. Daleks, of course, as I said, very rarely wishing to leave their sort of living armor that they reside inside. The Dalek itself, although it can be a formidable creature, compared to a human, it's actually relatively vulnerable. A human could probably, as long as it wasn't panicking at the sight of it, actually stand a pretty decent chance of beating a Dalek in a hand-to-hand fight, so they don't really get out of their armor too often. A bit of an introvert. So they use others to do menial tasks that they don't particularly want to do themselves, especially when in a hostile environment. The ship, again, would be used to police the general area, but mostly hovered around a large mine that the Daleks were digging down to the Earth's core to drop a sort of bomb that would basically mess with the Earth, and their plan was to turn it into a spaceship. The plan isn't really important. It's Doctor Who. It's mad, it's nuts, and ultimately the Doctor stopped them with, the power of magnets, and the ship would crash into the mine that they'd been forcing humans to dig for them all this time. Now, I don't know how many people out there are familiar with this ship. It is a work of art in its general design and layout. It was also the general form that many subsequent Dalek vessels in future iterations, as I said, would follow. Many Dalek ships would follow this basic saucer plan in future Dalek series, Doctor Who series. Yeah, we should have a Dalek series, that'd be awesome. Anyway, now let's have a Dalek companion. That seems to be the way Doctor Who's going nowadays. Let's have that. I'd love to see that. Imagine a Dalek in the TARDIS there. I mean, they had the little Cyberman head. I'm getting off topic. I do that. This ship, anyway, as I said, beautiful vessel. Bit looks like a kind of a flying stone, and I have seen it compared to a sort of robot vacuum cleaner in kind of terms of a general appearance. I think with its sort of pods it has on the front that make it look a bit like headlights, and its spoilers on the rear. Even though it's a saucer, unlike other Dalek saucer vessels, this ship is not omnidirectional. Although it can basically fly in any direction, its primary engines are at a rear, and there is an obvious front and top, bottom and sides to the vessel, rather than it being a bit more ambiguous in which direction it was going. And also these Daleks definitely had a flair for the aesthetic, because some of the features of the ship were clearly useless. They just kind of look good. Designed to intimidate, shock, or just generally impress. Who knows? With that said, there is no technical data on this ship. It's armed with energy weapons, has shields, has some kind of FTL capability. It's full of hostile little squids in knight in shining armor, ready to conquer and enslave the galaxy and turn the Earth into a gigantic spaceship to fly back to their homeworld of Skara. Why they wanted to do that? Who knows? Maybe it was generally to create the, ultimate weapon of destruction that they would ultimately do in Doctor Who, which I'm not going to spoil. If you've not seen it, I highly recommend the show. Hell, even the modern incarnation is worth a watch if you're up for a laugh. Now, With that said, let me know in the comments below if you're familiar with the movie, familiar with the Peter Cushing incarnation of Doctor Who. As I said, this is not mainstream canonical. It's its own continuity of Doctor Who that ended with only 2 movies. And although we can assume that much of the backstory and things of the Daleks and the rest of it is pretty much the same in this universe, this ship does stand out as a work of art and a piece of, well, beautiful engineering. Let me know in the comments below if you're familiar with the movies, if you are familiar with the ship, and who's your favourite Doctor. And it can be Peter Cushing. No one has to tell you it has to be one of the new ones. It doesn't have to be Peter Capaldi or David Tennant. But if it's not David Tennant, what's wrong with you? Because it's David Tennant. But Peter Cushing was an amazing Doctor, mostly because he was an amazing man and an amazing actor. And rest in peace, Peter Cushing. He died in 1994. What a shame. Lost to the acting world. Again, getting off topic. With all that said, if you made it to the end of the video, thank you for watching, and bye-bye.